Today, I'm joined by Linda Hauck. She's the owner and innovator behind Tapestry Equine Products. Now, reading through your about page, and I'm going to find out more about you today, but what really stood out to me was how the horses have been such a significant part of where you are today. And there's a few things that I was reading around some of, the reasoning behind you developed these products. Your ability to listen to the horses just shines through. And obviously, as someone who is on a mission to help bridge that connection between humans and horses, I thought you were the perfect gift. So welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Nika, for having me on.
Awesome. So let's get straight into it because I know you've got quite a diverse background. Before we get straight into the brand, the products, I actually just want to ask you a little question of the first one, which is, what's your first memory with horses?
I guess my first memory, again, I grew up in Toronto, which is a big metropolitan city in Ontario in Canada. Um, my first experience kind of with horses and ponies would have been the family Sunday outings to Lionel's Pony Farm. And we would do that on occasion. So that was like the first time I experienced that country type setting was
Mhm.
in that kind of environment. But the big disruptor moment for me was when I was 14 and a friend of mine in high school said, "Hey, Linda, my mom has a horse. Do you want to come see it?" And that was the first time I ever sat on a horse, like really sat on a horse, as opposed to being led around on a pony kind of deal. And it was like, oh, there's a whole world out here I don't really know anything about, but I like it.
I rarely remember those feelings as well. So, what was it just to get on and do your own thing, or what about that moment made you realize this is this is something I like?
You know, Nika, I would think it was the smells, the tactile, just the engagement with them. I didn't know how to ride a horse at that time, so I probably did get led around there to some extent as well. But I think it was just the entire the atmosphere. I went, okay, this really resonates with me because when you're in the city, you don't necessarily have access to that kind of interaction. And so it was just something very different, very new. And I thought, ooh, I like this.
The horse smell, hey, it's like if you're a non-horse person, you smell it, and if you're a horse person, you're like, what smell?
Yes.
What smell?
Right,
And
right.
so tell us about from 14, and I know you've had quite a competition career as well. Can you share a little bit about that and kind of what direction you went down?
So yeah, absolutely. So started riding at 14 and eventually found a barn that had pony club. And I'm back then very much a bookworm, became a student of the horse. You know, manual of horsemanship was always with me, and then all the other books that you needed to read as you progressed up the levels. So got introduced to that, the whole pony club rallies and that loved it, loved it, loved it, but was always on school horses because my parents, no way could they afford a horse for me. And then I kind of gravitated out of the riding school, was recommended to ride privately owned horses. And it's through that associations that I came across an owner, Dr. Carol Hannon, back in the 80s, who offered me the ride on one of her older event horses, although he was only a 15 one-hand pony standardbred, that I eventually tried out for and made the young rider eventing team on. So between being exposed to horses at 14, by the time I was 21, I had achieved my A in Pony Club and had already been on the young rider team. So that was my early years. And again, if anybody's not knowledgeable about Pony Club, back then, when you got your A, it was a 3-day affair. Like, and you got tested by, I can't even remember how many testers back then, but the attention to detail, which has stuck with me to this day. Physiology, anatomy, tack, bitting, saddlery, all that stuff. How does it work? How is it all interconnected? Because it very much is all related. And then after the age of 21, I continued to ride privately owned horses. I met another owner, and I was very fortunate to take on a Trakehner stallion that I competed up to the advanced level with steeplechase and other lovely thoroughbreds. Dr. Carol Hannon owned. I went intermediate with and tried out for the Pan Ams with a lovely horse named Top Shutter. And then it was just a matter of more life experiences. My ex-husband, he was into racehorses when I met him in the early 90s. And so I had a 10-year association with racehorses, from riding them to retraining them after they were done at the racetrack. I've always been drawn to the thoroughbred for their go, for their smartness, for their braveness. So I spent a lot of time in that environment as well. I officiated for 21 years. So as a technical delegate for eventing, and I went up to my level 3. And so you have literally thousands of hours watching horses and riders, thousands of hours. And so you could watch, tack and riding technique and breeds and all sorts of things, right? So between the coaching, the training, the officiating, and certain key horses come in and out of your life, they very much have an impact on you.
How did you find that transition from or going into racing? I'm just asking because I had a very similar experience where it was like Pony Club, loved the competitiveness, loved, and like you said, it's that attention to detail that you learned. And it was almost like the riding was the reward. It was like all the little bits came first, and then the riding was the reward, and then it was the games. I loved it. But then it was a stage where, very similar where for me, my parents said, well, we can't buy you the horse now. You're going into racing. And at the time, I remember my kind of friends from Pony Club were like, this is crazy. Like, racehorses are, what are you doing? And personally, I have a lot of good things to say, best thing that happened to me. But how did you find that transition?
Okay, so that's a great question. And, you and I have a lot in common there, Nika. It's a tough world. There's no two ways about it. It's a tough world on people. It's a tough world on the horses. And you have to, um, how to phrase this, right? Most of them don't want to be there. Most of those racehorses end up in low claiming events. They're claiming level horses. When you watch the big, exciting races, they just had the Kentucky Derby. The numbers that make it to the starting gate are ridiculously small given the amount of horses that are bred. But it is a tough world. And so for me, it was I've got to make your life as comfortable as possible while you're a racehorse. And so they taught me a lot. They teach you to be very attentive to detail because every day matters. Owners don't want to hear, I can't figure the horse out, or it's sore, or it's whatever. You've got to be ahead of the game. Why is that horse legging in? Why is that horse legging out? Why did you stop eating? It just goes on and on, as you know, Nika. We were fortunate enough most of the time when I was at the racetrack, we had excellent exercise riders who I could really glean some good knowledge from. Okay, so what was he doing today? How did he feel? And that kind of stuff. So tough world. I saw things I did not like that would be borderline abuse. Then you see some people that live, breathe, and eat for their horses down there. I saw horses that should have been retired a long time ago. I saw horses that were terribly, terribly underweight presented in the saddling area. I can remember one day actually in tears calling the stewards going, how are you letting this horse race? And they actually scratched him at the gate. So good or bad, if I'm that um, worried about something, I'll let it be known. Because for me, we have to be the horse's voice. And then you've got the great ones, or the ones that made the life easy, the horses that dragged you to the races, that wanted to be a racehorse, wanted to train, thrived in that lifestyle. So it's not easy because most of them, as I said earlier, don't really want to be a racehorse.
I noticed very similar experience. And for me personally, it really toughened me up. Not necessarily just the horses, the people. It was going from like pony club to kind of low amateur type dressage all rounder into racing. I was like, I have to really toughen up here. Like for me, that was a big change as well in kind of the new phase of my life. But I definitely resonate with what you said about the toughness at the early age as well. You know, because of my height, I would be sat on quite extremely weak, underdeveloped little fillies who look like ponies, you know, and you want to be like, you should just go in a field for 4 years and grow, you know, never mind. And but yeah, at the same time, having worked with some other horses and actually ridden track road horses that did want it and gave you that extra bit, and you went up to, you could feel it almost like them anticipating, please let me go, like I really want to go a little bit more. I've also had that experience, so just really interesting to know your take on that. And I also love what you said about how valuable you found the riders to really listen, because someone asked me the day, they said, well, surely track riding is super simple compared to like the training of dressage. And I was like, because of the association of what we see a rider, right, balanced on top of the horse's back compared to dressage, show jumping and all that. And I was like, wow, like you feel almost everything heightened on the back because you have to be so balanced and so, like you said, so aware of everything because it is so micromanaged, everything.
Let me give you a cute example, for someone that says something like that. We had a rider to this day, best exercise rider. His name was Harold Fortune. And you would understand what a 2-minute lick is. Harold Fortune could get on any horse, different stride, different pull, different whatever. And he could 2-minute lick every horse around the track. Like if you said, okay, Harold, we're gonna, 2-minute lick from the 3/4 pole and breeze the last quarter, you would watch him with your watch. He would be bang on every pole. And it was phenomenal to watch him. A beautiful hand, a beautiful seat. But my God, man, could he manage pace to the like right down. It was perfection to watch. And I'll never forget asking him one day, "Hey Harold, who's your favorite racehorse that we've ever had?" And we'd had a stakes winner who was just a good old workhorse, and we'd had some really nice horses. And he says, "Fly by Julie." And I went, "Fly by Julie? The one that spins all the way to the racetrack and spins all the way coming home?" And he said, "Yeah, I love her because she tries every time." And she did. But it wasn't, because for her, again, you had to listen to the horse.
Mm.
Julie was going to train Julie's way. Harold
Mm.
was just sitting on and doing his best not to get dumped because you could only go back up as far as the quarter pole, maybe the 3/8 pole, and then you were turning around. And Julie dictated what was happening after that. And he used to have to bring her off at the first gap and weave his way back through all the barns, you know. But that is, that's was worth its weight in gold because you had an exercise rider who said, "This is what's best for that horse," and probably for me too.
Wow, what a story. And funny how he also associated that as one of his favorites. Riding pace is something like I learned how to ride racehorses in the UK, and then I went to Australia for a season. Now that was totally different because in the UK we don't do the pacing with poles, the lights, the beepers like Australia. I don't know if it's like in America, but that was a new experience to me. But I was actually surprised that despite not being taught that way, how we were taught at the racing school, but also having surrounded myself with some good jockeys and listening to what they are looking for underneath them. I was like, God, even though they're two different countries, two different ways, it's still the same thing. We still want that same feeling, that ability to understand and understand what's happening underneath us without a lot of pressure in the hands as well. Because the other thing, going off on one here, but the racehorses really taught me to not ride with your hands. That I'm so grateful for them because having gone from the pony club to dressage, it was all about squeezing the hands. You know, you've got sponges in your reins, and you ain't doing that on a racehorse. What? And I learned about the neck strap, which I know is one of your products. And to this day, I will always ride in a neck strap. And I'm so grateful. It has saved me countless falls because just having that one thing, that neck strap, not
You
having
got
that
it.
Yeah, not having that constant pressure, and I'm forever grateful for it. But I'm also looking forward to hearing about the next strap story. So we've diverse. So from racing, how did we end up today with these products? And tell us about the first one. How did everything start?
I guess going back, I went through a divorce. I had some money. Do I invest in a house? Or I'd had one product in my head, which was the Spursuader Spur, Nika. It became the Spursuader Spur. It didn't have a name at the time, but my entire life, my degree is in wildlife biology. So if I never did anything with the horse career, then I would have absolutely transitioned into something with wildlife. So I've always been very animal focused. And in that degree, you have anatomy, you have physiology, you have behaviors, animal behavior courses, and you're always, trying to understand what's happening, be it the racehorse, the wild animal, your dog. You're always trying to pick up on, okay, you just gave me a look or you just reacted in a certain way. What caused that? What was the reason for it? And so back then, that would be, I launched that spur in 2009. So I would have had it developed in 2008. The universe kind of just kept saying, Linda, keep going. You're on the right track. Because at the time, as a longtime trainer of racehorses and retransitioning these guys, as you know, a lot of them are sensitive coming off the track. We all coach amateurs that don't have a great lower leg and it swings and they accidentally spur a horse and you get that negative reaction, English and Western. And I thought, okay, I need a spur sometimes because it's a finesse aid. Just give me a little bit more, bend through the body, move over, get over on the trail, whatever, right? And you and I both know as coaches and trainers, horses will figure out a rider's lower leg, right? They know when they got an amateur on them and it's like, oh, I'm going to cut that corner, right? Well, if you're showing eventing or dressage, you can't be cutting your corners. You got to have a little bit of shape. So in my head, I thought, okay, what does it feel like to be a horse? Okay, well, you're poking and jabbing me with that Prince of Wales or whatever spur is out there, which none of them were kind at the time. You've got the hammerhead, you've got rowels, you've got whatever, right? They're all a poke and a jab. And I challenge anybody that doesn't think that, put it in your own rib cage and you'll see exactly what they feel like. So at the time, I had a neighbor who had his own tool and die business. And I said, could you do me a favor? In Canada, we have a loonie. So I gave him a Prince of Wales. I said, could you put a loonie on the end of this, like design it and just make me a pair? And then I can try it and see if it does what I think it should do, because it should be a bigger contact surface. So I'm asking instead of telling. And so one of the key horses for me at the time was this big 16 three-hand Sienna colt, or he wasn't a colt, gelding royal. I've been Ontario champion with him in eventing, but my God, man, I wouldn't have put a traditional spur on him, not even a Prince of Wales, which isn't kind, guys. It really isn't. It's a poke and a jab. But I have a really good lower leg, and I thought, he's going to be the good one to see if I get the response that I think I should get. So I can remember putting my leg over him that day with the spurs for the first time, thinking this is a big day, Royal. Like this is a big day. Anyways, started riding him, warming him up, and then I started using the Spursuader just as a finesse aid, move over, leg yield, whatever. And Nika, his ears never moved. His tail didn't swish. And I thought, exactly, bingo. It should be that subtle reaction, partnership. I've just asked you kindly. He responded kindly. And I thought, okay, that's exactly what I was looking for. Next step, let's put them on an amateur that doesn't have a great lower leg. Put them on that amateur, they come off balance or whatever. You kick the horse with this persuader. Horse went, oh, did you actually mean that? And carried on. It wasn't the, stop, kick out, buck, drop you, whatever. It was just exactly what I was looking for. But on that amateur, oh, you could close your leg and actually you got the response you needed because it's a bit of an extension off the heel. So that was the first product in 2009. And just all the people I met along the way, the universe is telling you this is how it's supposed to be. I had a friend who said, hey, I thought of an idea, I thought of a name for your spur. And I went, not even a horse person. And I went, oh, okay, what? And he went, Spursuader, because you're trying to persuade. And I went, oh my God. Took me a day or two to actually go, okay, that's probably the name. And then again, I don't have a sales and marketing background. And I reached out to a tack store and said, hey, how important is packaging? And the girl said to me, Linda, it's everything. You go to a trade show, what's the packaging? And I went, oh God, now I gotta learn how to package this thing. And I Googled, I don't know, website design or packaging, and this beautiful website came up. And I went, oh yeah, it's probably down in California or whatever. Nika, the guy was half an hour from where I lived. Like, I did a random Google search. And anyways, so that gentleman designed the Spursuader logo, the colors. He's the gentleman that came up with the art of gentle persuasion. And if you look at the Spursuader, the bottom of the S is the spur. So
Oh.
that taught me you don't need to be a horse person to help a horse person design things. Be good at what you do, and
Mm.
the rest will fall into place. So having had that neighbor, having had that the gentleman who designed all my packaging and stuff like that, and then the very first trade show I did, well, into my booth comes Malcolm Ainge, the founder of Shires, and he looked at my spur and said, "Wow, these are different. Do you need a UK distributor?" And oh, by the way, I manufacture. And so that's how I became associated with Shires. So all those little things that okay, it never stopped me. And I'll be honest, I've never changed the design. The first design worked. The only negative stumbling block I've had with the spur is FEI. FEI will not allow them for dressage. I do not understand FEI. That has been a 16-year battle, and they keep changing
15
their reason.
years.
16 years. And it
And are you allowed to share why? What's going on?
so
Why is it a no?
their first explanation was they don't look traditional. The ruling was the spur needs to come straight off the back of the boot. My Spursuader has a 4-degree curve. So a rider doesn't have to do that. You just let your heels, your toes go out naturally. So when you close your leg, you will make 2/3 of that contact in the inner edge. FEI could never justify not allowing them. I had top level riders. I had the president of Equine Canada write them a letter based on humane grounds. They still allow rowels. They still allow a hammerhead. Everything that can cut and injure a horse, they still allow, but they won't allow the Spursuader. So that's
Wow,
the
I
only.
did not know that. I really did not know that. And even with the change in what's happened the last few years, obviously with big public figures and the rules are starting to change with other things, still no.
Nope, no.
We have
They
to.
their latest excuse was it could get caught on something. And my response to them would have been, Christopher Reeve got his hand caught in the bridle as he fell off. Bad accident. Do we ban bridles? A rider falling forward could get caught up in the breastplate, martingale, reins. So what are we going to do? Take off the bridle and everything now, and everybody has to ride with just a saddle? Oh, by the way, your stirrup leather is a loop. Your leg could get caught up in the loop. So they're for me, Nika, their philosophy and their reason just has never made sense. Never made sense. So it is what it is. There's a whole lot more amateurs out in the world than there are high-level riders. So as a tool for your toolbox to be kinder but still effective, here's
Mm,
an option.
what a story. And please don't give up. If there's anything that, or any of us can do, listen. If someone's listening saying, I know someone who knows someone, because let's face it, it's connection. Let's see if the universe can make that actually happen for us.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
you've said a few things about which you say so eloquently and so easy, is the little things about when you applied your leg first time with that spur and the horse's ears didn't move, the tail didn't swish. So a lot of that I'm sat here going, yeah, that's clearly the horse is showing you he's fine. But for people that may be listening going, how did you know that was a sign, Linda? How did you know that means a horse is comfortable? Or, do you have like a sequence of, you know, behaviors that you look for when you to understand if a horse is in discomfort versus, okay, this is what they're saying that they're happy?
Nika, you asked some amazingly good questions. Well done, you. I guess again, ears back, tail swishing, teeth grinding, short striding, kicking out, all are typically negative responses to whatever we've just done to them. So as you go backwards and go, okay, you gave me that response. What did I just do that caused it? So here's a great example. I was officiating somewhere, so I'm TD. I'm watching the dressage warm up. Lovely thoroughbred type. A gentleman's on it with a big honkin' spur. The length isn't necessarily the issue, but it was very tiny in its contact point, so it would definitely be a poke. And he was walking the horse, and he wants it to canter. So what he does is he digs the spur in right away, ears back, and the horse kicked out. What did the rider do? Kicks him again. So that horse went into that dressage test incredibly tense, incredibly angry. Ears were back, teeth grinding. And I thought to myself, you have created a test that was anything but nice to watch in the warm up ring. You didn't listen to your horse. You didn't even ask nicely. And now, ego gets in the way and he leaves the ring. And it's like, oh, well, that wasn't very good. And it's like in my head, I'm thinking, well, you created it. So when and it happens, Nika, as you know, for anything. When you're teaching a young horse to jump, how are they landing? How are they approaching it? Are they happy? Are they worried? Are they confident? You have to be good at listening to what they're telling you, how they're showing you, their eye. What is their eye telling you? The eye is key, man, key for the state that they're in. So if someone was to say to me, well, how did you know your horse was happy? Well, those are the classic negative signs people would get from using a spur, and I didn't get any of them.
I love that and love the way you answered it. And I'm just thinking here for people who would be listening and some of the audience that message me about things like questions about behavior, because I'm a big advocate for this as well, is kind of to really know and understand the horse that you have in front of you every day is stripping it all back to simplicity first. And then I almost say to them, like, if you're struggling to understand what is really going on, it's almost like a science project, right? We start with a horse, no tack, no pressure, no nothing. Just introduce one variable at a time and you don't have to be an expert in behavior because most people know their horses better than anyone who spends every day with them. Just
Mhm.
start to see when I apply, like you said, one thing, is there a change? And if there's no change, like you said, with those the tail swishing or the kicking out, that's extreme. Even the eye, the ear, whatever it is, the muscle, the top lip can tell you a lot what's going on.
Yes.
And okay, let's add another variable. So that's kind of my process is I look at it like a kind of experiment, let's change it into problem solving one variable at a time. That's kind of the outlook. But if someone, I get asked this a lot, so I'd love to know your opinion. My mare's always moody. She's always been like that. He's always girthy. How do you answer those questions?
Okay. Interesting. You should bring up Moody. Okay. So those, again, not seeing the horse, it's very hard to diagnose from afar. However, the girthiness, well, obviously I have an answer for that one, or at least a potential solver for that. Now, the moodiness is tough because, I won't say I've been haunted by it, but we had a racehorse, lovely racehorse, bi-theatrical, out of a stakes winning French mare that a girlfriend and I bought at a Maryland 2-year-old in training sale. His race name was Theatromania. This horse showed all the potential to be a top racehorse. In his first race, he get beat by a Samson Farm horse. He runs second in his debut. The phone started ringing. Is this horse for sale? Unfortunately, in his second lifetime start, they loaded at the gate. They broke. There was geese on the track beforehand, and he was in inside post position. They didn't unload the horses that they had loaded, move the geese, then loaded the rest of the horses. So his barn name was generous. And it was like he'd been stuck in a gate for I don't know how long. Anyways, it gets boxed in. Finally, coming down the straight, one of the best jockeys we ever used, Jim McElhaney, found a seam. Horse get beat by a head at the wire. So his third lifetime start, doesn't he find a hole on the turf course? Bows a tendon, chips an ankle, racing career done. Anyways, that horse was never happy. From the day we got him home to the racing stable, Nika, I struggled to figure that horse out. Why are you so unhappy? Moody, back of the stall, checked him for ulcers, sound. Yeah, he was a colt. He was a colt because of his breeding and didn't know what, he was going to do at the track. Sometimes you're never going to figure them out. And I just think, you know what? When I die and go home and I run into you again, I'm going to go past life. What was your sadness from? Because yeah, I'm quite confident the owner would agree with me to this day. We could never make him happy. He was turned out. He went to a farm where he could be turned out. Um, just a sad soul. So, you know what? There's some of those that I guess we're going to come across, Nick, and we're not going to figure them out in our way as much as we try.
Mm,
Changing
mm,
feed, training, changing environment, being kind, and just never figured out that sad soul. When it comes to tack, that's a different story, right? You can play around. The more you are a student of the horse, you understand conformation, you understand bitting,
mm.
and all that kind of stuff. I think you will get there quicker. But you said something earlier that made me think, going back to square one. I've had clients come to me and say, Linda, would you be interested in taking me on as a coach? And, I have two students in my head that the one horse, big 17-2 thoroughbred, this tiny little 5 foot girl came to me. And this horse would run at everything, run at every jump. And it's like, okay, we're going back to square one. And that means poles on the ground. You need to trust me. And it was a 6 month, because I keep a journal every day. I write down what is, the mood of the horse. Was there any, leg issues I was worried about? How did they react to the lesson? And it was 6 months in that finally he could figure out a grid, like it was a 4 or 5 fence grid with raised poles in between, nice big oxer out, and he never touched a thing. But that was a 6 month back to basics. He never understood where his feet were. I think he'd had, a trainer before that just didn't believe him. And as you know, Nika, racehorses, show horses, when they show potential, what often happens to them? They get rushed through the system. And
And
so
it's
it
the
was,
same in dressage. We see it, right? Nowadays with these
yep,
big, beautifully bred warm bloods that move like Vallegro and then some, and they're only four, and we get really excited, and we're like, well, actually, if we want this horse to be sound till it's 10 or 12, 15, we need to do walk work with it. It's got the ability. Let's save that. Let's do the opposite.
you're
But
quite
yeah,
right. And then there's that great racetrack expression. If you don't wait for them, they make you wait.
that is a really good one. I just wanted to close off on that story about that horse you didn't never know. And it's the same with dogs, right? I see this with all animals and some human relationships where I see so much emotional investment, obviously financial as well, but it's more the emotional side of things that some humans can put themselves through to figure it out, to tr must have an answer. And you said it so beautifully because if we go back to nature and we watch animals in the wild, like there are just some animals that will not be in the pack, that will be this, you're not here. And it's with animals, I think it's easier because they're so direct, they're so black and white. There's none of this need and emotional, that we have. But it's a really interesting point where sometimes you just have to accept that it wasn't meant to be. It just wasn't
Mhm.
meant to be. And there's no science behind that. Our brains are like, why? I will show this person that this horse will be happy. And I think it's a conversation that's not often spoken about, that it's okay to say it's enough. I can't do
Mhm.
anymore. It's not going to make you a better or a bad person. Mhm.
No, and you know what? It's you're doing what's best for the animal, ideally. Well, unfortunately, injury sidelined that horse. So, but we had another racehorse. Bought her at a 2-year-old in training sale. She was by formal dinner. Her race name was Elegantly Casual. So for us, 2-year-old racing was always the icing on the cake. If they took you there, great. If not, at least they got track exposure, they got gate exposure, they might have had a little bit of speed, right? And she was conformationally and, advanced enough that we were able to do 2 furlong, 2 furlong start or whatever in Fort Erie. This is a long time ago, so all the details may not be absolutely correct. But she ended up in October of her 2-year-old year. So that's a fair, she's almost 3. She took us there. It's not like we had to force her to get to the races. I'll never forget. She got on the transfer van from Fort Erie to Woodbine. It was a thunderstorm up there that night. It was nighttime racing. So it was 2-year-old filly. You know what the 2-year-old maiden races are like, Nika, right? Gates open and it's like everybody for
Man
themselves,
for himself.
right? And it was a high level claiming race. I think it was like maiden 32,000 or something. This little filly won going away in the slop. Jimmy Mack never sat on her before. And it was like, oh my God, put her away. We thought, great. You don't need to do anything else again as a 2-year-old, right? You've experienced a race. You came out of the race sound. Great. Put her away. Let her grow up over the winter. Brought her back in the spring and next year. Nika, she never beat a horse again. As a
Really?
3-year-old, she bagged up. It's like, why are you bagging up? You're not in foal. Vets couldn't figure it out. We tried a female jockey. We tried long, short, dirt, turf, took her to a farm, trained her off the farm. Every jockey would say the same thing. She breaks and spits the bit. Gave her 7 chances, and then I sold her as a hunter. She made it crystal clear, right?
Not doing it.
Sorry, I did it
Yeah,
once for you, and I don't need to do it again.
I'm done. I'm done. Was she chestnut?
No, she was a gorgeous bay with chrome, and that's
Mm,
yeah. So the name Elegantly Casual, it was a really nice name for a pretty
great.
pretty little thing. Wasn't very big. Boy, she could jump, and I popped her over a fence, and I said, you know what, we've done. What's
Mm.
the point? They're all saying the same thing. She's sound. You can't force them to do it. That's when somebody's going to get hurt.
In across all these disciplines, it's the same thing. You can't force them. I'd love
Mm.
to start to talk about the girths and where did this start? Because we mentioned girthiness, so it's definitely something that's more common nowadays. I'm not saying it's just because of the girths, but I'm seeing a lot of horses with ulcers. I'm seeing a lot of horses that are just having tack issues. So I'd love to know about how your story started with the girth.
So that was a pretty much an instant, okay, I need to change this because in all honesty, I wasn't thinking of redesigning the girth, Nika. It was a horse I had in 2015 that came off the racetrack. I had bought him off a client. He had a beautiful way of going on the lunge line. No tack, beautiful way of going. He had a custom fitted saddle. And then we all had, or a lot of people still do, that solid leather girth with just the elastic at the ends. Put that on him. His canter was horrible. He wouldn't move forward. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I know how to invent a product. I have connections now. I'm going to redesign the girth. And I thought, okay, well, here we go. So I'm a horse. Where do I breathe? How do I expand? Where do I do most of my movement? Well, my God, I do it from the sternum up, not the spine down. So for me, it was like a bra. Okay, it has a job to do, but it really has to let me move. So I had the idea of the elastic from the racetrack, because on race day, they use that 3-inch elastic. And then back in the days when we steeplechased, we would use an overgirth. So that's how I thought of the design. I thought I don't want one single piece of elastic holding me on. I liked the idea of the cross pieces from the overgirth. So I thought, okay, I went to a gentleman that did bespoke equipment. I said, "Hey, Brian, I have this idea for a new girth in my head. Can you, if I tell you what I want, can you make me one?" He goes, "Yeah, for sure." So as I'm telling him what I want a central sternum pad because it has to be symmetrical like a bra. That way as well, you don't have to crank it because it's all elastic. I have something central to help keep the girth in the saddle in place. Then I want the elastic to come up from the bottom. And as I'm telling him the dimensions and proportions, he looks at me and he goes, "Linda, I think you're onto something." And I went, "Okay, well, you know what? I got a horse that won't move in a traditional girth, and it's wintertime in Ontario, so I cannot make this girth any softer. He's going to tell me what he thinks." So he made me that very first girth. And I remember putting it on that Thoroughbred Magic, thinking, oh my God, this is a big day. Like, are you going to buck me off because it feels so weird? Nika, again, the universe said, you're on the right track. That horse never looked back again. Mentally, what he used to do with the traditional tack, I would bring the saddle and the girth. He'd go to the back of the stall, drop his head, pin his ears. So again, referring back to what you had said earlier about someone says body language, that's clear body language for you. I'm not liking what you're about to do to me. Okay, well, I'm that kind of person that's going to try and change it then. So, anyways, it takes him like 3 weeks to mentally come around after I transition him to the tapestry girth to waiting for me at the front of the stall. So
Wow.
again, horses don't lie, Nika, right? They don't know the brand, they don't know the price point, but they will absolutely tell you what they like or they don't like. And so after transitioning Magic to that girth, we never looked back. And so I
Mm.
thought, okay, he can't be the only one. And so I went into production and I'm not going to say, the rest is history because it's a constant, you're constantly working the business. But the stories I get back from customers and I get to see the horses change or people send me videos, it's like, that's why I do it.
I really appreciate that you sharing that, and it's so good to have that why every day because we were talking about this earlier before we started, which is anyone has their own business. It's never clean, easy sailing, and to have those moments of reward, just kind of reinforcement as well because of the lows that come with having your own business, it makes such a difference. So I can imagine getting feedback from clients like that. It must be very rewarding. Very
It,
rewarding.
and as you know, it keeps motivating you because one of my favorite stories years ago, probably 7 years ago now, I was in a feed store in Eastern Canada. I got talking with the owner. I don't know how we got talking about girths because I was in a feed store. Anyways, he
Mm.
said, "Oh, is that girth with all the elastic?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Let me call my girlfriend." Gets her on the phone, says, "You're never going to guess who's standing beside me. You know that girth you have? The inventor's right here. Tell her your story." She said, "Linda, I have a quarter horse that wants to kill me when I am tacking him up. I have every cinch on the market. I have told my trainer, maybe he wants to go to somebody else.
Mm.
Saw your cinch and thought, what's one more cinch? Linda, you changed my life." So again, the horses are always talking. Are you listening?
Are you listening? And that's it. And as a someone hearing this who might have a very similar situation or story that you've just shared, it's going back to when they say, well, how do we listen? And I've got this thing on the social media, the horse listener. It's I think we overcomplicate it as humans because we maybe look externally. I've noticed this in patterns where, the minute something isn't feeling right in training or even if it's that they're moving away from me in the stable and I come in, it's so easy to very quickly try and fix it. Whereas in most cases, this is certainly what I've learned with horses, is when we learn to take a step back and just start to observe, the answers become very clear quite
Mhm.
quickly. It's just and it's sometimes when I'm getting a little bit, even to this day, I have to check myself, which is you have to be a listener of your horse and to really build that partnership is being fully present. Which again is so simple to say, but how many of us, when we're working, our horses are on our phones? Or, walking up to the stable with the tack in hand, we're on our phone. And by the time we look up, we're like, oh, what's going on? And we've missed about 5 or 6 big hints and clues to what our horse is in or what state they're in. That could definitely give us the solution to the frustration that we're feeling as, these horse lovers. So, yeah, what would you say to that?
You mean being present?
Yeah, because I see it nowadays. It's so many riders, even the warm-up arena, is just on their phone.
That is so disrespectful to the horse. I'm sorry. For me, it's a black and white. Your phone
Yeah.
stays at the locker, in your groom bag, at the stall. As soon as you get on your horse, no more phone. For the amount of time that you need to be present with your horse, as a coach, I wouldn't allow it.
Mm. Mm.
So for me, honestly, Nika, it's black and white. You and I, or I certainly, you're a bit younger than me. Um, we didn't have cell phones. We survived. You had no choice but to be present with your horse. I think it is a huge disservice for these
Mm.
kids, adults, whoever, to be on their phone and sitting on their horse. It's
Mm.
dangerous, and I think it just totally lacks respect for your horse. Full stop. Can I go back to something because I just thought of something else when you were saying about again, what a horse tells us. How do we try and work with them? I have two other things. Some people will say to us, Nika, well, this is the way we've always done it. Why should I do it any differently? And I think of again, the racehorses taught me so much. I remember two racehorse situations. At the racetrack, you tie them to the wall, right? You groom them and you tie them and whatever. That's not it. That's not a great, you know, um, habit, shall we say. But I'll never forget, I had a 2-year-old colt. He wasn't going to tie to the wall. And so I just taught him to ground tie. Just, okay, little pull on the halter, drop the shank. I could walk all around him and he was happy as a clam. Tie him to the wall and it was a different story. So again, you have to be adaptable. You have to be, just because 99 other percent of the people do it one way, doesn't mean if it doesn't work for you, I'm okay adjusting to you. And just like the racehorse fillies, Nika, they are the temperamental ones. You and I know a good filly is a tough filly. And we had two tough fillies in the barn way back when. Fly by Julie was one of them, Tricky Lana, another one. And I would say to the grooms, these little girls, they show up in the afternoons. So when we're grooming them, they can hang their head out of the stall over the webbing. We're not tying them to the wall because they're not happy on the wall. You let them watch the world go by because they show up in the afternoons. We got to keep them happy, right? Keep it safe, but what can I do to make this experience work for you?
Mm. That is a really key lesson. So I appreciate you sharing the adaptability because there is, and I actually did a webinar on this last night about that there is no one size fits all approach, which we all know and we all say. It's the same for you and me, for everyone listening today. But if we honestly ask ourselves, do we really fully adopt that when we go and see our horse? And this is something that I've also learned with the racing, which is you're only as good as your last ride, and you show up riding the horse you have today. So you might have had a really friggin' good ride yesterday, and you might be feeling on top of the world, but you might also go into the stable, and if you're present and aware and realize your horse doesn't want to be ridden today, well, that's okay. You can do a different kind of work, and or you get on board and you feel they're a bit flat. We're just going to change strategy and go for a hack. So this I've often found very in my early years, especially as stepping into like from a rider into a body worker, chiropractor, it's people like give me the plan I need to do for the next, 6 weeks. And it's like, yeah, I give you the guidelines, I can give you the steps, exercises to help, but every day is going to be different. And I'd rather you, as you actually mentioned earlier, track how your horse is. because
Mhm.
we can sometimes get a little bit stuck in the negative loop about what's gone wrong and overlook the small, really seemingly insignificant steps of progress that if we started to track what we did and how the horse felt, what I believe we would actually have happier people and horses because we'd start to look at our horses as athletes and ourselves, but we'd also start to recognize that for those of us that have been athletes, like you don't train the same every day. You might have the motivation to think, right, just get up and do it, but you're not going to come out and do that PB every day. And it's something that I have seen. I think we forget that sometimes. We often overlook that training is progressive. And as we all know now, it's a long game.
Nika, you bring up another really good point because I'm in my 60s. I work out once a week with a personal trainer. I don't move and bend like I did 10, 20 years ago. And we need to honor the horse in that capacity too. So our older athletes, I guarantee you, cannot bend and move like they used to. Warm-ups are probably different. Expectations need to be different. So yeah, that's a whole other conversation that, you know what, I'll be honest, I don't think it really hit me until I started working out probably what, 5, 6 years ago now, thinking, geez, man, that used to be so easy for me, right? But now it's not, and understandably so. Our horses are no different.
It's definitely an, for another conversation for sure, but riders looking at themselves as athletes, you don't have to be competing at a high level. But if you're riding a horse and you're expecting a horse to compete, you have to expect the same expectation of yourself, which is
Spot on.
movement,
Mhm.
eating. And you very quickly, as you rightly said, you start to realize that oh God, the next day you try a different exercise and you are really sore, You're thinking, God, what have I done? So why would it be any different for our horses? I know we've almost got to an hour, but I would really like to ask you about the neck straps because it's so personal to me. And it's personal in a really obviously lovely way, but I remember transitioning from flat racing, then going like a full loop and then into dressage and how I was almost not laughed at, but it was almost like, what are you doing? Like I would still ride with my body protector on, like the lightweight body protectors. I would still have my neck strap on any horse, whether it was the experienced Grand Prix master or the young Lusitano who needs a hack around the field. So to me, a neck strap is part of the tack. Like it's actually, I would even say that because I would nowadays, when I have a horse again, it's going to be the dream is to ride and train bitless and bridleless, but I'm going to have my neck strap. I'm telling you now, that's part of my jods.
Oh, Nika, God, this is a great chat we're having. So the neck strap, again, I didn't invent the neck strap. All I did in Canada, or what I produced was when my daughter started going cross country in pony club and that kind of thing, and I started getting to an age where I lost my nerve. I think after I got pregnant. It's funny how I think some women get very brave, and I kind of went, those nice big fences, I'm not sure I'm into that anymore. So, but regardless, the neck strap is just a fantastic tool that I'd rather be looking at it than looking for it. If you're on that youngster, that racehorse, that green horse that you're transitioning, or my daughter's going cross country, or whatever as a student, it's there to remind you one, where your hand should be, two, it's right there, you can grab it if your horse starts acting up on you and you're feeling a little insecure in the saddle. Fantastic tool for nervous amateurs. They've got something right there that can hold on to, and not the bucking strap that attaches to the cantle, right? Or the pommel, I mean. You don't want to be over top of your hand. You want your hand here in front of you. That's where you're best in balance. And I think, to be perfectly honest, it's an ego thing. North American riders have not adapted to the neck strap like they do in Europe. You can go to a riding school in England. Every school horse has a stirrup leather around the neck, or a neck strap. The woman who taught my daughter to ride, because she had the school horses and that, all of her school horses had neck straps. And I thought, you are spot on there, Stephanie. But I think it's more lack of awareness. What does it do? And I do think ego gets into the way. William Fox Pitt came to Ontario and gave a clinic years and years ago. Everybody walked in on their horses. First thing he said is, "Where's your neck straps? I won't get on a horse without one."
Yes, he's in the next strap crew. I
Right?
did not know
And I
that.
won't ride without one. No way.
I
I feel naked without it.
Yeah, genuine. I should say it's like a bra to me. I love it.
There you go.
I have a story about a neck strap, which I was on a racehorse and we were. I agree with you. It helps with the hand positioning, and it's not the same as in the UK when I first came over. They called it an oh shit strap, which is on the cantle, and I rode in it, and I was like, this is just not right. Like it needs
Yes.
to be, my hand needs to be by the withers and sorry, in front. So. I was on a this has happened a couple of times on a horse where we're just trotting aimlessly around. It was a trotting ring, and the other one was on a hack. And if I did not have my finger in that neck strap, guaranteed I would have gone over the horse's head and probably injured myself. And this is just for riders listening that are a little bit unsure, but we've all probably been on a horse that if it's doing all the time, see a vet, but trips, right? Randomly loses that front foot. The head goes down so quickly. Even if you are the best rider and you have your hand contact the same, when they trip like that, it is so hard to keep yourself up. But when that finger's in the neck strap, you ain't gonna go down. The neck strap is gonna stop you and come back up without jabbing the horse in the mouth. So for
Exactly.
me, very much agree with you. Like it's actually more than anything, it's a safety thing because these unpredictable animals that we love so dearly, it is an animal at the end of the day, and it can trip as you and I can lose our ankle at any time. It can happen. And so, for anyone who is listening, going, why would I need it? Honestly, it has saved me a few falls. Just so simple with the horse just looking one way, losing their front foot, and I could have easily gone over their head if it wasn't for the neck strap. Or, as we've just said, you jab them in the mouth because your hands are going up with them. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I can remember, transitioning those racehorses to show horses, and some of them will dance coming home, and you just hook that finger underneath a neck strap and go, "Sweetheart, you can dance all you want. I'm not going anywhere."
It's
All
like a
right?
seatbelt. Do what you want.
Yes, it is.
I'm
And no,
in.
that was so well said, Nika. No, thank you for saying that. No, it's true.
That's how I look at it. But yeah, I have just a final question, which is not on, I know we've gone off tangent anyway from what I sent you, but what is one thing a horse has taught you that you couldn't have learned anywhere else?
What has a horse taught me? More so than anything else. I guess really, Nika, is they're on their own journey, and
Mm.
best we accept it. Whether you think you've got the next, Grand Prix dressage horse, jumper, racehorse, they have their plan too. And the better you listen, the better things go for everyone.
Thank you for sharing that. And I've never had someone reply with that. So it's just brought a real kind of sense of like excitement to me because I think we should definitely talk about this separately, but I'm doing a four-part series at the moment about how when we look at the horse as a structure system, understand
Mhm.
it, not just like these descriptive things like well-muscled horses, but actually understand their systems, and then looking at the rider, then looking at the discipline and what you've said then about the horses actually know what they want is really not spoken about because as you mentioned there about a horse transitioning careers, from like a racehorse, which is the common one, into eventer or show jumper or dressage, like we have to really appreciate that phase is a total system reboot. It's a total different demand on what they've been bred and taught for most of their life to do. Now, I'm not saying if they're bred for it, they can do it, but I think it's really not well spoken about that just because it's now an ex-race horse that we want to turn into a dressage horse, doesn't mean that it's going to be a smooth process. That horse might not want to do it. And again, going back to the listening, we're going to save ourselves more vet bills, and more importantly, the welfare of the horse with lameness by starting to listen to what they actually want and can do capability wise.
Well said.
Mm.
Spot on.
So if anyone wants to get in contact with you or find your products, I will put a link in the description below. But where can they find you?
Linda at tapestry.equineproducts.com. It's the same handle for Facebook and Instagram. You can call me. My phone number's on the website because I talk to people weekly on Girth Fit and all sorts of stuff. So I'm easy to find.
Brilliant. If I'm ever in your neck of the wood, we should definitely do a clinic together.
Absolutely, my dear. I'm in.
That would make me, yeah, really, really excited. Right. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you, Nika. Thank you so much.
Cheers.